Good morning and welcome to the Auto Talk Weekly Wrap. I'm Richard Edwards and I'm going to put my laptop up on a box so that you're not looking down at my chin, looking up at my
That's my
chin.
trip.
And yes, it has been a few weeks. I was sick, and ironically, the second I'm well, my daughter's sick. So, yeah, it's been a bit of a mare of it. I hope everyone else's families aren't unwell at the moment. The flu seems to be going around everywhere. I think like over half of the school my daughter goes to is out with, and I hear it's the same at the high school nearby. And then it's just pissing down with the rain. So yeah, it's. Can we just move on to September now,
I
or
wouldn't mind
just
having
spring?
August first, actually, just quietly. August is traditionally the best month of the winter season when you get this beautiful blue sky, glorious Auckland days, and it's not a cloud in the sky. It's cold, crisp, clean, clear. Love it. Haven't had
How
too
is it
many of
out there
those.
today?
It's absolutely precipitating down. It is pouring
This
down with rain. You're in Auckland right now.
this
You
is
know what I mean. Today is not
this is
an
just a
outdoor
new.
day.
It's the same. It's the same here. Uh, okay, let's see if we can do this.
Uh-oh.
It is just rain, constant rain. Has been for hours. So
If I turn my camera around, all
yes.
you'd see is cars and the dealership cat and rain.
Hey,
And
at
the
least you
cat
can't
wants
be
to.
out there wiping them down today.
We have people to do that. Thanks, Richard.
You still have extra staff at a car dealership in Auckland?
Well, no, not extra. I would have thought keeping the cars clean is kind of a fundamental point of having vehicles for sale, isn't it?
I don't know. There's not a lot.
So,
It's true.
yeah, we've seen
Do
it
you think
all.
too cheap or do you think too cheap or NZ new cars have people specifically there running around wiping down cars?
I've seen
I
them
wouldn't
there.
have people specifically washing down the cars either, but there are duties and roles to perform as part of your
Yeah, true.
overall job that you have. See, here at
Yes.
Collins, we multitask.
I have
Mm.
to say, the cleanest my vehicles are is usually the day that they've been purchased.
Mm. It's actually a truism. I say to customers sometimes, this vehicle is as good as it's ever going to look right now. Driving it away from here, I know it'll never look as good as this again. And they usually go,
I have a little uh, what would I call it? Um, Treat I like to give myself once in a while. And then look, I've got a kid and we live at the beach, so it's pretty much impossible for me to vacuum all of the sand out of the car
yeah,
and all of the crumbs. So rubber dub on Epsom Road in Manukau. You go there, you get quite a reasonable quick room, have a coffee, a little wee pastry from the cabinet if you're up for it, and
nice.
off you go again. And the car looks lovely afterwards.
For
So
five
yeah.
minutes until you drive back up to Mangawhai and then it's covered in grime again.
You should have seen my ute when I came back from our trip up the far north. It was
Mm-hmm.
just absolutely covered in sand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a sandy place up here.
Yeah, it
Can
was
I
nice.
share
Yeah.
with you a little dealership? Those of you that watching this that are in the trade right now, you know how it is with the industry, and you have good, bad, and different customers. And some things, some days you walk away, you think, why did I even bother? And every now and then, we all know there's a little gem that comes out of nowhere that you weren't expecting. I want to show you this only because it gives you an appreciation of the fact that in the industry, some of our customers are really nice people. But I got this sent to me by a customer who bought a vehicle from us. Probably can't see, but that's a handmade scrapbook card. It's all in quite a raised relief. Believe it or not, she bought a pink aqua. She made this for me before she picked up her car. It's got the little relief keys and bits and pieces you can pick up and jangle. So not all is bad in the dealership land. Sometimes we just get to meet some really cool people. And the old phrase is say, oh, we treat them more like friends and family than we do customers. That is actually, in many cases, a lot truer than you might think. And that's across the whole industry, whether it's used or franchise. And that, I think, is it's a way to take a Friday and think not all is bad in our industry. Sometimes there's little high points too where you least expect them.
That's nice.
Yeah. Yes, that's very nice. A lot
Hmm.
still is bad at the moment, but it is what it is.
Yeah, got to look for the high points though.
Now, we've been away for a little bit, but I haven't gone back and gone through weeks of news. I've just kind of quickly thrown up what has been
Mhm.
happening over the last week or so, because there's still quite a lot around. It's actually been pretty busy out there. Movers, shakers, news, so forth. Nor have I put it into any great particular order. Oh, sorry, I was trying to keep the stream live there. So let's run through a little bit of news and talk some bullshit as we go, because that's what we do.
We
Um,
do.
Yes. Oh, I'm just back from Australia. I was over in Australia yesterday at the Australian launch of the Australian reveal of the pricing for the Zcash 7X. Um, if you thought all the good Chinese stuff is already kind of there and the prices were coming up to the other stuff, I don't know about that. That car is spec for spec a Tesla Model Y competitor, but built twice as well, and it's cheaper. The Australian converted price in New Zealand dollars is 62,500 for something that is better built than most BMWs and Mercs. That's part of the story, right?
Yep.
Scandinavian design, built in a brand new factory, all this kind of stuff. Two battery options, 75 kilowatt and a 100 kilowatt. Uh, the first one gives you 400 km range. The second one gives you 615. Now that's WLTC, so think 400 and 550.
Mhm.
But the charging. The 75 kilowatt hour version, if given a strong enough charger, which we don't have a lot of them really any of them in New Zealand yet, but they'll come. 10 to 80% in 9.5 minutes.
Wow, that's quick.
What speed charger do you need for that?
You need a 450 kilowatt charger. Now, technically, there are some in New Zealand. Zeta put them in a number of stations, but they're not running at that speed at the moment. They need the wick turned up. But even on the 300, 350 kilowatt ones that are starting to become a lot more common, you're still realistically looking at a charging time 10 to 80% of about, well under 20 minutes, about 15 minutes for most people's charging needs. That is, it's not fast enough to walk over to the service station and use their toilet without being a customer. It's
I was
getting
going to say,
crazy.
it's not fast enough for you to walk away and buy a coffee and come back.
And it tows 2 tons.
Okay.
2 tons.
That's interesting.
That's impressive.
The race is on.
It'll be here by the end of the. It'll be here by the end of the year. It hasn't been announced or even technically confirmed, but it's very likely the Giltrap Group will be distributing it. And the price I would pick for New Zealand, someone from Zika Australia said, "Could we do it at 65?" And I was like, "Yes, you could, but whether they can or not is another matter." I would say Giltrap are going to stick a 69,990 or a 72 grand price tag on it. But yeah, interesting the stuff that's still coming through. That's kind of a next generation car compared to what we're already seeing in New Zealand. New Zealand, we're currently seeing of the Chinese stuff. Generally, I would almost argue the last generation stuff. This is this new generation stuff that's coming through. Super impressive and still some competitive prices to have there.
And interesting battery choices, Richard, because at those 2 options, it definitely pegs the Tesla with their 2 options in terms of range. So it's nice to see a lot more competition out there. And I guess the other bit that will be interesting is the new MG that's got partial solid state battery in terms of charge time rates and distance and capability. Interesting to see what the price is, because the solid state battery technology is still a little pricey, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm glad we'll see that car come to New Zealand as there's some talk about whether we'll get that or we'll get an updated version of the existing MG4. Maybe that's a China-only model, but we'll see. The person to ask about that is the man in the first story we're going to post up today, or at least when he gets his feet under the table, and that is Dean Sheed. Now, after God knows how long with the Giltrap Group, he left there about a year ago. A year ago? Yes, something last year. He is now going to be the new country manager for MG Motor in New Zealand, effective August 11th. Now, I'm not going to delve too much up into this, but I believe that makes him the 7th in the last 5 years. So read into that what you will. Um, a few people have texted me saying that he's a brave man taking on that challenge, but I kind of feel like Dean is probably one of the guys that could handle that challenge. And David, you've probably spent a lot of time with Dean, and you'll have a take on this. So, former European Motors Distributors Senior Leader Dean Sheet has been appointed Country Manager for MG Motor in New Zealand effective August 11. She began his more than 40-year automotive career with Ford New Zealand in 1987. During his more than 25-year tenure at the Gultrap Group's distribution arm, Sheed was General Manager of the Volkswagen brand for more than 13 years, and Audi brand for more than 11. He was a life member and former board director of both Drive Electric and the German New Zealand Chamber of Commerce. We probably want to be switched to the new China New Zealand Chamber of Commerce, I'm guessing. I'm pleased to share that I've officially joined MG Motor as Country Business Manager, leading the brand's continued expansion and commercial performance across New Zealand. It's an exciting opportunity to work with one of the fastest growing automotive brands in the region, a company that blends rich heritage with modern innovation, agility, and momentum. So, yes, an interesting move there from Dean. Clearly, stepping away from work and living a more relaxed life was not for him. What's that? How does that meme go? I don't want peace. I want problems.
Yeah.
That's serendipity to a T. No one can ever really walk away, can they?
No.
Of the appointees, and this is taking nothing away from previous appointees in that role, Dean's probably the one that's had, of all of those that have been in the role in New Zealand, he's probably got the most experience behind him. And he's got a genuine interest in the technology, the EVs in particular. But he's used to dealing with that ICE through to EV continuum. He's got a lot of experience. He's well regarded, and I think he'll make a really good fist of the job. And personally, I think it's a good choice for the brand. And Dean, if you're listening or ever see this, congratulations. Good on you, mate.
Yeah, look, I think I think we delve a little bit into MG here. I think some of the problems with the country manager role in New Zealand stem out of Australia. I understand Peter Chow is a strong leader to work for, demands performance. Again, they've had some other staffing issues when they're in Australia that may have caused some issues back in New Zealand. Can't say too much. And hopefully Dean can, I suspect the controlling New Zealand element of it all is probably not the tricky bit of the job. It's relating to Australia and to a lesser extent China that's going to be the more challenging part of the role. And he spent a lot of time dealing with distributors in other countries. So hopefully he can bring that experience to bear and understanding where that goes. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. And I hope that Dean has a longer tenure than most who've been through that company or through that seat in recent years.
Yeah, I wish him well. He was one of the people when I was in my previous role that I did actually have quite a bit to do with, even though he was not on the MIA council. But he was a person that I had a lot to do with, and I regard him highly. I think he's a good person. He's very capable. He's got his head screwed on, and I think he'll make a decent fist of the job.
And MG is an interesting brand too. I think the cars they're bringing here aren't necessarily a lot of Chinese stuff now is reaching for being in two directions, either the highest tech, the fastest moving, the glamorous stuff, or not cheap value. So Cherry, all that kind of stuff, and then you've got at the other end the Zeekas we all know the brands now. MG is kind of an interesting one in that it doesn't seem to be the latest and greatest, but they all seem to be solid vehicles at value prices. And the brand seems to have appealed to a lot of people. I certainly know around here, we've got a big retired community in Mangawhai. So many of them now are driving MGHSs. It seems to be like seems to be the kind of retired couple ride in Mangawhai now as an MGHS. It's nothing flashy, but it's good value.
Together at Morris Garage and by British craftsmen, do they still believe that? And this is not a slight against MG whatsoever, but I am astounded.
No, they build them in a country that can build quality vehicles, China.
That genuinely believe that they're buying an MG screwed together in the UK, and they're quite shocked when you point out to them that it actually isn't. We've got friends of ours.
I don't think that many people believe that. I'm sure there are some, But I think
Are
for
you,
more,
are you surprised outside of the rarefied atmosphere, Richard?
I
Again,
think,
your site.
I think for most of them, it's simply the fact that they can go down the dealer and buy something that's spec the same as a $50,000 RAV4 for $36,990 drive away.
Yeah, I recall a conversation I had with Anthony McLean in the earlier days, and his objective in trying to get MG on the map in New Zealand was at some point you need to have a mix of vehicles where you can mainstream it rather than it being niche. But it was to be mainstream it with value for money. So it was always going to be a price conscious, but they wanted to mainstream the brand in New Zealand. I think that successive country managers have managed to do that. And I think going forward, it will become more of a mainstream brand and less worrying about whether it's the cheapest or it's the latest and the greatest. I think they're just going to peg it somewhere in the middle, but always try and achieve that value for money. So price consciousness will always, I think, still be a feature of the brand going forward.
Yeah. And they've got a Ute coming, which makes them a real car brand.
Yeah. That was an interesting move. I didn't anticipate that. The industry changes. I was just thinking about this recently, just how much it's changed, even in the last 2 years since I've been out of it. It's just the vehicle mix, the technology, what seems to be in, what's the flavor of the month. The OEMs are continuing to, I guess, be disruptors in terms of trying to bring what the market wants.
Yeah. Yes, no, that's right. Now, let's move on to the next story of the day. And this one, I think we're going to be talking about this for a wee while. I'm not going to there's 8 different stories we're going to talk with opinions on this. You can go read them here. We're just going to put up the announcement and we'll give our own opinions because our opinions are more important than anyone else's. And that is that it's true. The government has unveiled the next steps to replace petrol tax with e-ruck. Transport Minister Chris Bishop says Cabinet has agreed to a suite of legislative reforms paving the way for a once-in-a-generation overhaul of how New Zealanders pay for roads, moving away from fuel excise towards electronic road user charges, e-ruck for all vehicles. Currently, drivers of petrol vehicles pay around 70 cents per litre in excise duty, fuel excise duty, which is funneled into the National Land Transport Fund, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, going through this announcement, which is very long and talks a lot of stuff. So the legislative changes will include removing the key requirement to carry or display RUC licenses in favour of digital records. Let's face it, the cop knows that you're out of where your RUC is before he walks over to the car on his little iPhone thingy. Enabling a broader range of electronic road user charge devices, including inbuilt vehicle systems. So what I understand there is you might be to go for devices that don't necessarily have to go through the whole big install screen, that kind of stuff. Allowing post-pay and monthly billing models. So you just basically get a charge of your credit card at the end of the month, or you get a bill at the end of the month. Separating NZTA's regulatory and retail functions to allow fairer competition, and bundling RUC, tolls, and time of use pricing into single payments. It's a lot of talk, not a lot of detail actually yet on what's happening. I sat down with the minister a couple of months back, and yeah, he indicated all this was coming. If you were a reader of Autotalk, you probably didn't find this a huge surprise. But most people don't. Most of the public don't necessarily read Autotalk. Only you wonderful industry insiders. The thing with this all is they've got to do this right. They've got to get the details right. There's a lot of water to go under the bridge before we even get close to this. They're saying they'll pass this legislation this year. I would be surprised if they get a lot of the detail work done this year.
I think you'll find, Richard, that a lot of the detailed work has already been done. This is an issue that's been bubbling away for quite some time, and there have been a lot of internal reports and a lot of proposals put up to previous ministers. Previous ministers, in my experience, have balked at this because it is a big change and the devil is in the detail, and you've only got one opportunity to do it, and it's got to be done right. I first promoted the idea of RUC for all vehicles when I was general manager at the ministry way back in 2005 to 2009. And I got these horrendous sideline looks from my colleagues and other people and say, what? And I said, well, you've already got utes and diesel vehicles doing it. And then when I was in my previous role, I continued to publicly advocate for it. And it wasn't until ERUC started to come along and the heavy vehicle sector has been trialling this, that it overcomes a couple of issues. So the first issue is, how do you track people? But now that all of our public roads are digitized, we know what's a public road and we know what's not. We know when people are on it and when not. But that requires having the right technology in the vehicle. Because the idea is you shouldn't be paying ERUC when you are off public roads. But of course, when you are off public roads, you're paying fuel excise duty because you've still got to use petrol. So there's that. The biggest thorny issue, and it's raised its head this week, is the big brother, all-seeing, all-knowing government about every move that we make. So in my advocacy in the past on this, I've been quite clear to try and draw a distinction between measuring distance travelled on public roads versus the speed at which somebody is travelling along public roads. I would be less inclined to support the move if they are going to do speed and enforcement and all of that. I do like the idea of wrapping together congestion charging, differential time charging, tolls and distance all into one bundle. Having gone through a number of toll roads recently, it's a little bit of a, it's not hard, but there's a little onerous to sort of log on and clear the tolls and pay them and things like that if you don't have an account. But doing it this way, I think is good. But they've got to make the vehicle, the change right, and it's got to be cost effective. And I don't know, the moment you start putting technology into a vehicle, how's it going to be managed? If you can rent it as opposed to buying it, then I think that's a much better way of doing it. And I think you'll find a lot of this will become clearer, because I know officials have been working on it and beavering away with quite big intent for about the last 4 years.
It sounds to me like the technology side of it's going to be optional, right? If you went and mandated that everyone had to have a GPS tracking unit in their car in New Zealand to drive on the roads, then New Zealand First would go wild, right? Let's be blunt. We all know which sector of the market we're talking about here.
Well, minimum $800 if you start doing that.
Yeah, it would, but well, I don't think it would be a minimum of $800. So A, you're talking about going up to scale, and B, potentially we're talking about taking away things like the screen element, that kind of stuff. So ultimately, it could be as simple as a unit that just plugs into a cigarette lighter, right? I tested like 5 years ago a unit that did that, connected to your phone and everything and all that. It was $100 or less, and had a whole pile of other features in it as well. So
Just
that's
making sure that
I don't think the tech or the cost element is actually that bad in the long run.
no.
From the technology side, I think that's going to come right down very rapidly, and I think the biggest thing there is the whole removal of the need for a screen. The other side to it is more that they are going to have to, because of those people who are like, "We will never track me," blah 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 blah, that they're going to have to run basically a two-stream system, right? They're going to have to keep the old system on where you just go and pay every once in a while, and if you get pulled over by the cops, they check your account, and if your kilometres aren't there, then that's there. And if you go through a congestion charging zone, they'll scan your number plate, and you'll get a letter in the mail if you don't pay in advance, all that kind of stuff. Problem being is, by doing that, you're introducing a whole layer of extra costs by having a two-speed system, essentially. What's the problem? But I think unless certain parts of the government want to wipe themselves out of existence, then you're going to have a problem.
But you got that now, Richard, in a way, because one of the arguments against going to RUC in the first place was that RUC has a lower level of compliance than fuel excise, because the tax is collected at the point of sale. RUC, you actually have to buy, for light vehicles anyway, you have to buy a label and display it. And a lot of people forget. I mean, I just checked mine the other day and I realised I was 900 kilometres over, and I thought, I better go and set that right. And they would have called it at WAF time anyway, because you wouldn't get a WAF if you haven't got up to date RUC. So, I mean, we have compliance issues. It's the issue is, how do you make this work in a cost-effective way? Because cost was a barrier in previous discussions. and how do you overcome the Big Brother concept? And just tracking the media discussion and talking to a number of people this week, the Big Brother ghost is alive and well on this issue. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how this pans out. Personally,
But
I think
I think it is, and I don't think you'll get that Big Brother thing to go away, and that's why they need to run that two-speed system, and that's the annoying side of it. I actually think the bigger issue with all this is that there is an element of Trojan horse to all this, but it's not about the government wanting to track you. It's about how much the government is going to charge you for driving on the roads. In all this talk of fuel excise is going to come off and fuel's going to be cheaper, but you'll pay through your ruck. It's not entirely true. I don't believe fuel's going to go down that much. I think the fuel market, of course, will price accordingly, depending on what happens at the time. There's an element of pricing that's, well, that price looks good, that price doesn't. I think there is the long discussed aspect of that the government needs at some point to raise the emission ETS fee on fuel. I'm sure that will align pretty much to the same day that RUC comes in. I don't, and the fact that for most cars you're going to end up paying. We don't know entirely what the system is going to be, but you're going to end up paying more to go on the road. At the moment, you look at non-ruck cars versus ruck cars, right? So my Atto 3 costs about $7.60 per 100 kilometers to be on the road from a ruck perspective. A Corolla Cross Hybrid, similar size vehicle, costs about $2.50 to be on the road for fuel for cost per 100 kilometers. So what are they going to do? Are all those Corollas going to end up paying $77.60 suddenly? Is that,
Yeah.
We need the detail of that.
This is one of the issues. So you didn't have to be a rocket scientist 15 years ago to know that with the rise of fuel efficient cars began to become prevalent, that the funding model for the use of public roads and the building of public roads was going to have to change. So there is inequity in this way the system works at the moment, and there will be some inequity in the way it will work in the future. You just can't get around it, but it will change. So the RUC model's parity is based on around about 15,000 kilometres per year. And if you do less, then fuel excise works out better for you. If you do more, RUC works out better for you. But then, of course, under 3.5 tonnes, there's only one RUC weight. So I would expect, and I would hope that in part of this detail, there will be more linear bands for which you are paying RUC. And then, unfortunately, that might also then penalise hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and EVs because they tend to be heavier. So it's a lot of detail yet to come, or let's put it this way, a lot of detail that has not yet been made public. And I think there are some good reasons for that, because I don't think they want to let the hair loose in the paddock before it's time to have public consultation on it.
Yeah. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting. It's going to see interesting to see if they do stratify under 3.5 tonne. Do they stratify it just by weight? Do they stratify it by engine capacity as well, or CO2? I mean, this is actually something of the weekend. It was with a couple of last couple of days with someone. How do you work out the fact that a V8 it technically will make V8 turbo cars theoretically cheaper to run versus a hybrid and all this kind of stuff, or the same price run versus the hybrids? There's no penalty for those again. It's such a minefield.
That would only be the case if they don't have a built into the e-RUC system a CO2 penalty.
Mm-hmm. Do you think they will?
I would expect to see one. Yes, absolutely.
There you go.
I would not be surprised.
Devil's in the details with it, the complexity. I think the biggest issue, honestly, I'm sitting back listening to you guys talk through the details, is the political nature of it. And it's a really hard sell. And the timing of it, I think, irrespective of whether the officials are far down the track or not, there's probably a good few years worth of finagling out the finer details to make it politically acceptable. As it appears to stand right now, if you look at the social media aspect of it. It's understood by the people in the industry and the people involved in fleets or new car purchasing, but for the great unwashed out there, the middle New Zealand sinking, it's really poorly understood about what it actually is. It's perceived as a tax. And so politically, it's going to be a really difficult sell to have people understand what it does, and worse, the fear that it's going to be simply a mechanism to ratchet up the cost of operating the vehicle. And you've just alluded to that. And David, you made a good point about adding in CO2 factors, and then we talk about road pricing being stuck in there too. That, I think, is people's fears.
Yeah, I think it is. Both the major paper groups have done stories now indicating that there is virtually no chance of this being a lowering in the cost of motoring in New Zealand. It is very, very likely for everyone to be a rise in the cost of motoring in New Zealand.
Well, I've always been very clear, and when I've talked about this, is that if you go from a fuel excise to a ruck, there should be no net change in cost, because one's added onto fuel and the other one isn't, and so you would, all things being equal, you'd see petrol prices come down to being similar to what diesel is. Even diesel might be a little bit higher. And then you'd have your ruck. But of course, that's not what's going to happen because of all of these different factors that are going to be built into it. So your billing needs to be clear, in my view, about what you're being charged for and how you're being charged for it. Graham,
even from a base point, you're adding new cents in this thing. A lot of this discussion was around allowing companies to operate the system. Those companies are going to want to make a profit, and that's great. New Zealand is a tech leader in this space, but no matter what they do, no matter how efficient those companies are, they can't be more efficient than the fuel excise system. So there's going to be an added cost in there for people to operate the services. And I, for one, will probably go. I will take up one of those commercial services because I don't want the hassle of going and getting paper ruck all the time. I want all those benefits, but that's going to be a cost.
I mean, I just need to point out, I was going to say this to Graham, there are already thousands of light vehicle users who pay ruck because they have diesel, and when diesel was more prevalent, they had it. So this ought not to be a surprise to a lot of people because it's been around for ages.
And look at the compliance.
I'll probably choose to continue to run a paper ruck system because it's easy. I just go down to my local VIN shop, which is down the road, and I buy it. I'm quite happy to keep doing that.
It's a compliance issue, David, and again, look, I run ruck on my car as well. I mean, I'm used to it, and just like you, I ran over by about 700 k's without really realizing what I'd done. I actually ended up having to actually pay the ruck bill separately to NZTA before they'd allow me to purchase further ruck on it. So they're pretty damn efficient these days. But I also see in my rarefied
air, naughty boy.
I know. I see a lot.
You're lucky to get pulled over by a cop, because what is it? $250 plus 2.5 times.
Yeah. It's just because my vehicle had been to Wellington and back, courtesy of a son of mine, several times running around, and it had chewed up a whole lot more of the road user than anybody anticipated. Another story. But I see a lot more non-compliance out here. And I'm not saying West Auckland's like this little pocket of like nowhere else in New Zealand. But if I'm seeing it here, and it's a combination of a lack of compliance and a lack of enforcement as well, that it makes it the argument to put a large part of our fleet across is going to be a lot more difficult. Just for the record, what I'd like to point out here, it's a bit like superannuation politically, is nobody really wants to make the move to touch the superannuation age because it's a political death. It's like a wasteland. This is a sort of issue that, to my way of thinking, should actually be a cross-party accord because it's such a significant change and it's so subjective around meddling from either side. You know, there's an election, there's a change in what that means, there's a change in what's brought into it. All these different other values get inputted and then it gets wiped or it gets changed. It's so important that it actually needs to be cross-party. Stop the crying from Labour and from Winston about how unfair it is or how wrong it is or the secrecy of it. Just get everyone on the same page and make this a one template for the future to go forward. Otherwise, we're going to be bitching about it politically for 2, 3, 4, 5 years without any good outcome for the parties involved.
I think it needs to happen. I've been long in support of this. I think road pricing is really good, all that kind of stuff. I believe in just force the GPS on everyone, and put in some place some kind of protections, but no one will believe that the protections exist. One of the tests that's going to be really hard to kind of run through is just that simple bar of how does it affect poor people? And I hate saying that. Well, how does it affect lower income New Zealanders? This is going to be pretty crap for those at the bottom. I think pretty crap. And you've indicated it before, Graham. A lot of people running around here without registration warrants. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
This is going to be even worse. I mean, let's look at the starting point. Those at the bottom aren't necessarily going to be able to afford the GPS tracked units or the digital ways of doing it, which are going to be the most cost effective way of doing it, where you get the biggest discounts for not recording when you're off the highway, for not paying the bigger fees for getting your ruck. I mean, what does it cost to get a ruck label and paper at the moment, David? It's $9 or something?
I just bought 10,000 Ks and it cost me almost $1,000. And I sort of walked out and went, ouch. And I said to the clerk behind the desk, I said, oh, everything's going up. And she said, yeah, it's just the way of the world. So,
but if you're living week to week and buying your labels 1,000 kilometers at a time, it's an extra like 15% cost you've got to run on because you can't afford the digital unit. And if you're living week to week, now if you are lucky enough, you get into some situation where you can go and pay on a month to month basis. Well, imagine if you are again living week to week, you're just squeezing in your fuel into your car, which at the moment you're doing, but it's kind of metered out through the month. And then at the month you get another bill the size of your power bill. It would be devastating for some families. So it's going to be interesting to see how they handle that.
I have some difficulty with that, Richard, as you can probably tell, in that every time I fill up my ute compared to my wife filling up her car, I'm paying $40 less a fill up, or maybe more sometimes, and than that. So it's all depends on how the fuel price is adjusted, but the net overall cost is not going to go down.
That's not always the way that cash flow for lower income New Zealand works, right?
I think you're missing the point, David. I think you're missing a really key point here. Is that
on somebody who is only earning $20,000 a year, guys? I'm pretty conscious of what a low cost economy is about at the moment.
No, you're missing the point. It's not about how much money you earn or you have. It's your ability to manage your financial affairs. And look, all three of us here, we're able to balance our, the old phrase, balance our checkbook, so to speak. But a lot in that sector, that financial ability to manage anything further than pulling a battered $20 note out of their wallet to put $20 in the car to get to work. And I sound like I'm a Labour politician now, but it is actually quite true. And that's about as financially able as a lot of people are actually to manage their affairs on a weekly, daily basis. It's not about whether they've got the money or not, but it's the piss poor job they make of managing the funds they have.
Somebody, Graham, who does not have the money. There's somebody who does not have the money, who is earning 20 grand a year pension, and 12,000 of that disappears in rates and insurance. So effectively about 8 grand to live on, plus anything I can get from investments. I quibble over every cent. So already I know what the issue is. Don't give me
I do. I'm not dismissing that you understand how to live on a lower income, but you got to look at it from the perspective of people who are really struggling at the bottom, right? And they go in, and it happens to be that their petrol tank they're probably filling the petrol tank, but they're $40 they can scrape in to put in the tank that week to get them to back and work is $5 or $10 less than what it was the week before. Now, do they go then and have a little separate account where they go and squirrel that away to buy their ruck at the end of the month? Or does that mean that their kids can have cheese on their Marmite sandwiches that week? I mean, that's as Luxon wants them to make for school. And the reality is, if they are in that situation, they'll put the cheese on the sandwiches.
Oh, no, I understand that. I mean, but they're doing that now. And they are having to make decisions about whether they fill the tank up or whether they only fill it up 3/4. So, but the point that I make, and this is what people are forgetting, the fuel price should come down because the excise would come off it. It then gets swapped by the excise, then becomes a ruck. The question is, how much do they tinker with the ruck to increase the ruck, which means current ruck players will also pay more. So it's not going to be inequitable in that sense because they all are going to be doing it. It just continues to be a challenge one way or the other.
I'm not talking about it being equitable or not. I'm talking about just the way things move. It's and I hate using this term, but
But you're
this is
missing the
going
point
to
because
end up being.
you're missing the
I
point because
understand the point.
I don't believe,
We're almost
I
each other's
do
Yeah.
point
not,
right about
I
now.
do not believe that this change is going to make it any more difficult for them to manage, because they have to manage it now, but they will manage it differently or not.
Oh, they'll manage, but I do think it's going to be harder. So you're going to end up in those sectors with a lot of people who just put it in the too hard basket. I do think there's an element of, and I said I hate the term, the poor tax. Have you heard of that before?
Yeah.
Um, it's. I do think that is going to come into play here. Um, Graham, you probably sat at the at a service, been to a service station in some of the poorest parts of where you are. How many people are filling their tank?
At that point I made before, exactly. Just down the road, the one that I get my coffee at least I would have when we were having good times. Now I'm on dealership coffee instead. It's not about the size of the financial issue that you have. It's about how you manage your finances. And out here, we see a lot of people that just make a terrible job of being able to manage the concept of money and funds and online banking, or they can barely struggle by with an FPOS card. I've got someone not too far away from me here right now who struggles with actually managing to deal with wages into an FPOS card on a weekly basis. It's not about how much money you have, but it would appear that across the, should we say, the poorer sector of New Zealand, the middle class sector, I'm sure even at the upper end of income too, a lot of people make a really bad job of being able to manage their daily money, their daily finances, and the more complex it is, the harder it is for them. They don't learn to adjust. They just make a really bad fist of the next thing too. You talk about the gas station up the road, see that all the time. And it's not about whether they make the cheese and Marmite sandwich for the kids. It's all the other poor decisions they make along with that transaction ends up being $20 in the tank or $10 in the tank, and the old, packet of Winfield Reds type thing. We're not good at it. As a nation,
No.
we're not terribly good at managing this sort of stuff.
But
We should
But
be.
I noticed Phil Haynes in the
for this to work,
comments.
and for this to be fair, I think that the costs to buy ruck need to come down in all aspects dramatically. I believe the cost to buy ruck at the moment is nigh on fraud levels. It's ridiculous, and I think it needs to be easy. It's ridiculous, David. How much what I can't, I'm trying to remember the fee is to buy ruck at a VTNZ or a service station at the moment. Sorry, at a post shop. It's nearly 15% of the $1,000 cost.
Yes, your one-off fee. What's
You can
your
buy it
one-off fee?
online, of course, which I didn't, but you can buy it online. I was just going to make
And,
a
and
point.
it's the same, and it's almost the same fee to buy it online.
Yeah.
The
Phil
transaction
Haynes,
cost for ruck is massive.
if you haven't seen it in the comments section, Phil Haynes has made a few comments that are kind of interesting. Hi, Phil.
Phil's always got something good to say. You know what? I think let's sum it up and say that this is not an argument that's over yet. And I think as a number of years under the bridge, I think politically, before we see widespread implementation followed by widespread enforcement, because they're two wholly separate issues. And there's a lot of stuff yet to be worked through. And I think the biggest part of it is going to be the cell. David's right. The technology is already well in hand within officialdom, but it's the cell that's actually going to be the hardest part.
Yeah, the only thing I worry about, the only thing, Richard, that I worry about is the level of confusion, because if there is a level of confusion about this, it's not going to pan out very well.
Yeah. To print a ruck label, or to buy a ruck label currently to buy a new ruck, the cost at the moment to do the transaction is $13. $13 to take money and print out a label. That's a rort. It's a rort. Yeah. And you don't pay that fee, or you pay a lower fee if you're buying via a digital system. And that, I guess, is my point. If you can afford the digital system, you can get away with that fee being tiny. If you can't, then you're stuck paying that. They need to make it more flexible.
If you're buying your ruck in chunks of 500 kilometres or 200 kilometres, let's just say the system allows you to do that. then it's a horrific penalty right there and then. And that's the reality for a lot of people will not be able to manage their financial affairs sufficiently to allow for larger chunks of ruck to be purchased.
Even if you're buying in lots of 2,000 kilometers, it's an 8 or 9% fee. It's nuts. That has to go down. That's one thing I would like to think everyone agrees on. The transaction costs need to drop on ruck. Long been a sticking point of mine. Phil Haynes says Chris Bishop's statement and Q&A stated it will recover more revenue to cover more road projects. Yep, so more revenue being sought there. I'm okay with more revenue as long as it means better roads. Phil Haynes, lower income people.
They used to do more revenue by just putting fuel excise and ruck up anyway. So
Yeah.
nothing's changed.
Yes. Phil Haynes, lower income people buy used cars, and the average used car is 14.8 years old now. A 20 car, which is 90 to 100k, probably 10 litres 100k in the real world, for this current ruck is 10% more than pump duty.
Yeah, I'd have to do the sums on that. I think I'm wondering just how many Ks per year Phil has put into that calculation that he's done, because if they're doing about 15,000, it should be fairly similar. But I don't know many people who do 15,000 a year unless they're driving to work every day.
Yeah. So yes, anyway, that is a big and contentious subject. I think to summarize the answers from the industry associations, it's yes, but do it right, please. I think, and that's a fair statement. It's something that has to, in some ways, happen. But yeah, let's just hope it's done properly. Otherwise, we could end up with a situation again where the next government comes in and rips it out.
That's my big fear. That's my big fear. Should be cross-party, and I'm pissed off at the likes of Chippy wonking on around it on the edges when there should actually be getting all the parties get behind this thing and actually make it workable for the future. Otherwise, it's just going to be a stuffer for years to come of manipulation. We just don't need that.
Yeah, and I am concerned from what I know from from speaking to various people around the place, that there is a lot more work to be done on this than what you get the impression from what the statement that came out from the minister is. And I am kind of worried that it is being used as a bit of a, hey, look at us situation, that potentially they're pushing it a bit earlier because they need something forward moving to say. So yeah.
Possibly. I think a lot of the policy work has been done. But that's only about 30% of the journey, because it's then got to be translated into legislative speak, and then got to be thought about in terms of ensuring that you cover, cross your T's and dot your I's as much as possible. So there's still a lot of work to translate what is a policy decision into a practical operational model.
Yes. Right, let's move on, because I need to knock this off in about 5 minutes' time. And we've got a few stories to go through, but let's speed run these ones. So the used import market was down again in July, 10% overall to 8,063 units, down from 9,003 in July 2024. So yeah, not great. Where are we? Light commercial volumes were up. Yeah. Light commercial volumes were up, which actually means that the passenger cars were even worse than we thought. So, yeah, you can look at that way. Toyota still in control, Nissan and Mazda. Aqua still the leading vehicle. So, yeah. Nissan Leaf has been actually kicking along, 4th overall.
But why?
Credits!
They're a swine of a thing to sell, but no one's... Well, no, I won't say this. A number of Leafs are coming in as for credit farming.
Yes.
Look, we see the stuff coming through. We see the stuff being offered. If you actually extrapolate the numbers out as a generational tick box of what year and specification of Leaf that's being imported, you might be surprised.
Yes. I know what you're saying. We all know what you're saying. Commercials led July's steady new vehicle sales. Right, I think this one actually surprised a few people. How positive the month was. Uh, Field Days obviously has some carryover into the month, but even then, it had some carryover into the month last year. So it's all relative. Figures for July: 11,671 new vehicles sold during the month versus 11,862 last year. June total was a 26% up year lift on May, which is great. And May was it's we're heading in a direction somewhere. Association Chief Executive Amy Wiley says, while the continued uplift is welcome and encouraging, it will take several more months of similar sales levels before an improving trend can be confirmed. It's obviously been a challenging time. What was the top stuff? Toyota RAV4 was the top passenger car, but it wasn't the top overall vehicle this month. That was the Ford Ranger. And the EV result that had been great the month before, tailed off a bit. BYD still did 400 vehicles though, so that was pretty solid from them. BYD confirms the Denza brand for New Zealand, appoints a new chief operating officer. BYD Australia and New Zealand has confirmed that its premium brand Denza will be launched in both markets and led by Mark Harland, who has just been confirmed as its chief operating officer after founding Denza in 2010. BYD took full control and development of operations in 2024 from their partner Mercedes-Benz. So Harland was at EV Direct, which was the previous distributor of BYD in Australia. What's happening in New Zealand? I spoke to them. Atiko New Zealand still is involved in the distribution, though it's a slightly different arrangement to BYD. So Atiko is in the process of appointing dealers in New Zealand at the moment. So if you want to be a Denza dealer, then give old Warren Wilmot a call or tap her on the shoulder on LinkedIn. Too Cheap Cars has opened a new branch in Sylvia Park. Interesting, in the building that used to be the home of New Zealand? EMD. EMD were in this building in Clearmount Drive, smartly located right outside IKEA. Or the new IKEA. So the Too Cheap Cars Group opened its latest branch located at 8 Clearmount Drive, Sylvia Park, on August 1. In a previous life, the site was occupied by the head of New Zealand head office for many years before it moved across the road. And it was formerly occupied by the local head office for Mercedes-Benz. It's a new milestone for the brand, strategically positioned directly in front of what will be New Zealand's first IKEA store, opening late 2025. It's designed to capture unprecedented vehicle traffic in one of Auckland's highest density zones.
I hope they've done their traffic plans really carefully, because
capacity for 150 vehicles.
Well, being a recipient in here, we're talking about the Costco effect. And if you're not from Auckland right now and you've got a Costco coming your way, beware, because the traffic congestion that store causes out in West Auckland on a regular basis is biblical. And the IKEA effect, I know Clearmount Drive, I mean, it's the way that works in the surrounding streets. I don't know yet what the traffic management situation is like for IKEA in terms of its entry, exit, and more importantly, the tailbacks for it. But I hope it's a good one, and for the sake of Too Cheap, that they haven't just got a parking lot outside their yard on the road as opposed to a flow through of traffic. Although one might argue that parked cars, what else are they going to look at while they sit there 15 minutes waiting to get in?
It's also a brave move, and that would be at a very expensive chunk of real estate.
Ooh, yes, it will be. Yes, it's right on the fringe of Auckland's development industrial area, where it's not slated for housing, and you can actually build an industrial complex without fear of it being taken over by apartments. So yeah, it'd be a very expensive site.
Rush hour
here's the scenario.
It's pretty bad, but during the middle of the day, it's a little bit better. But certainly, beginning and end of the day, it's pretty tight.
Bring an IKEA in, David.
Here's a scenario for you. You go out on a Sunday afternoon with the wife. You go to IKEA. The two of you go a bit crazy. You've just got trolleys and trolleys of flat pack furniture. You drive out. You walk outside. The Toyota rack where you came in is just not quite going to fit it all. But you look over to Too Cheap in the distance, and you see a somewhat high mileage high ace there for $9,999, and you go to the wife. It might just be easier just to go and buy a van.
I like your dream scenario with the high ace for 10 grand. I'm thinking, boy, you are on a different planet, aren't you?
Very high
No,
mileage.
what actually happens is you and the wife are coming out of a Kia fighting over how much money you've just spent, who's going to assemble the damn flat pack furniture, why it's now 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you left home at 9 o'clock and you haven't even had lunch apart from a cheaper Kia sandwich. And now all your money's gone and you can't
A
even
cheap
find your
IKEA
hard drive.
sandwich? What about the meatballs?
Yeah, I know. They're going to bring the meatballs here, aren't they? Surely going to bring the meatballs.
The meat, you get a meatball and a hot dog, man. Freaking heck. Jeez.
Anyway, I digress.
Yes.
Looking forward to a Kia.
Now, what's this one here? Vehicles for easing of clean car standard targets warns current rules risk stalling progress. The Imported Motor Vehicle Industry Association is calling for a reset of New Zealand's clean car standard targets, warning that overly ambitious emission rules could stall rather than support the transition to a lower emission transport fleet. In a blog post published this week, VIA pushed back on the perception that used import industry is dragging its feet on emissions, saying the sector is not opposed to progress, but needs realistic market-appropriate targets to deliver it. Even in 2023, the best year to date for bringing in low and zero emission vehicles, New Zealand transport emissions still increased, VIA said. That should give everyone pause. We've been chasing the wrong goal in the wrong way. VIA argues that New Zealand's standards have been modelled too closely on overseas systems, ignoring the unique characteristics of the market, including a heavy reliance on used imports and strained household budgets. I think the second part of that is probably a bigger factor than we play into. I mean, how much of the fact that we're missing this so wildly is the fact that we've lost like 30% of our car market in the space of 2 years, and our age is blowing out because we're not replacing cars.
Yeah, I read this with some interest, and my immediate thought was it was a little bit of a stuck record. But well, to be fair, I could understand what Greg was saying, but he runs the risk of some people thinking it might be a little bit of a stuck record on it. VIA had a huge input into the design of the system, as did MIA and other people. And at some point, when new rules come in, this happens. I recall when the vehicle emission exhaust rule first came in, it decimated the used car sector for some time because you just could not buy vehicles that met the new standards. And it was anticipated that would happen, and it was anticipated that for a few years it was going to be quite tough. And I think this is what the used vehicle sector is facing at the moment, is that we're hitting the point where the standard is starting to bite. And it's the same with the new vehicle sector. The standard is going to bite, except they got some relief on the light commercials. So it's an interesting point, and I can understand why he said it. I'm not sure that I agree with some of the sentiment.
I do agree with him. We live and breathe it. We're looking down the barrel of what we are going to be faced with being able to import and the cost of doing so. And to be fair, David, you and I have traded blows before in our previous careers about the industry's, crying wolf on various sectors. And I went through the first stage of the exhaust emission rule. I went through that. I went through the ESC campaigns, and I did the modelling for ESC back at the time, and it was a very clear correlation between what we were currently being able to transact and what we would be for quite some time. And yeah, it had a significant effect on a lot of sectors in the marketplace. There was a degree of relief given around ESC, and that enabled the sectors to carry on. Because what we also tend to forget is one thing our industries kind of like to have is continuity. And we've had fairly good continuity for a number of years in both the new and the used sector. We've had meddling around the sides, but we kind of know which way we're launching. And the problem with the clean car standard now is, from the used sector, we're beholden to what's going on in a marketplace that happened 4, 5 to 10 years ago. And the crystal ball, unfortunately, doesn't transport us back to tell the manufacturers of motor vehicles in Japan 10 years ago what to actually sell. And that's the pointy, sharp end of the clean car standard around what's accessible to our marketplace to import on a value proposition to maintain our carbon requirements in the next couple of years. And it's not pretty. And Japan has stubbornly refused to, for whatever reason, whether you like it or you don't, Japan has refused to embrace electric technology in its fleet. It has stuck by the hybrid model.
Therein lies the issue, therein lies the issue. It's an external factor to New Zealand that makes it quite difficult. I accept that, but yes.
And I think once we recognise that, whether we like it or not, that is a big part of what makes up our fleet and why New Zealanders buy used vehicles as opposed to recycling new vehicles instead. And I've heard all the arguments, we can source them from different markets. Well, we tried, it doesn't really work. Japan's always been, and is probably always going to be, our primary source of vehicles in that intermediate to lower market sector. And if we don't at least manage our fleet expectations to what the Japanese are doing, we fall afoul. Richard, are you chasing a fly in your room or something? Now Richard's just about gone.
Because my phone went on.
Richard's just about off the reservation. Yeah, well, actually, we're getting bits and pieces from you. There you are.
Probably now.
Are we there?
Yeah, I can see you.
Hello?
Hope everyone watching this can see you.
Can you hear me?
He can't hear us.
Uh-oh, you can't hear us.
Can you hear me, though?
Yes, we can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay, good.
Can you hear me now?
We can still hear you. Even now, we can hear you. Uh-oh. David, it might be the Graham and David show from this point onwards. Because you and I have been arguing about this all the way through, so...
There's been worse.
Hello, are we back? Yeah. Are we back? Can you hear me now?
You're back. Yeah. We've been here the whole time. How about you?
Yes, sorry about that. God, don't know what's happening there.
Sounds to me like
anyway,
you want to wrap things up a little bit because you're losing your phone mojo.
No, we've switched back to the house-style Wi-Fi now. The lovely technical issues of being in a new place. Look, quick over from Phil Haynes. It's okay for imports, but isn't playing out into the fleet. Every 10,000 fuel used or new imports volume slows the fleet refresh. And 10,000 in 2024 means 10,000 older 2020 cars on average on the road and use in 2025. Until negotiating the gains we made from importing any $100,000 clean, 100 unit cleaner imports. Okay, here's my take on this. Here's my take, my political take from the. He's picked on the wrong aspect. If you go to the government and say the system's a bit broken, that is hard for the government to go. Yeah, but we were the ones that set the numbers that are there now, right? If you go, the system has some good things to it. We worked on it with you guys. It works well. You kind of reset it last year, but the market has totally changed, and here's why. The situation to blame. It's not you guys to blame. It's the situation to blame. You might have more of a chance.
I agree.
There's nothing feasibly wrong. There's nothing technically wrong with the system other than we'd love to see some loosening of targets, but that's a tricky thing when you're the one technically hitting it against the target going, please change it. But to say that the situation has changed, that's different. That's out of everyone's control. That is, the government and yourselves can blame it on the situation.
I do recall during that consultation process that the industry associations had back in the last government's tenure. David, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I do recall there was somewhat less consultation that was actually genuinely listened to and enacted than the industries might have liked. We are at least in a government structure now where it appears that the consultation process is taken a bit more seriously. The problem is that we're working with an architecture that is now reasonably old in terms of the expectations at the time the legislation was put forward and the reality of today's marketplace. Is that a fair assessment?
I think...
you can burn some political capital here. Go on, David. Go on.
I don't have any political capital left, Graham. Look, I think in the early days when it was a Greens Labor, it was the Greens were really pushing this quite hard. And then with Labor, they just said, "Oh, we're just going to do it." There was some listening, but I think you're right. There was a reasonable amount of "we're going to do it," and in some respects, they were more inclined to say, oh, we'll just take it to the used car sector, but we better not screw totally the new car sector. I think there was a little bit of that behind their thinking. But they got it initially. They got it to come back to Richard's point, your point, Richard. Initially, they got the settings for the new vehicle sector wrong, in my opinion, and you know this. And I produced for the association at that time a graph which is known as the Crawford graph, which says, here's the rate of decline for all these countries overseas, and here's the rate of decline for what you've done for us. And it just intersected it almost, well, not vertically, but at a very sharp decline. And when National saw that, they said, you can't do that. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And I think they changed the settings then when National came in for the new vehicle sector. And it probably is timely to come back and say, well, have we got the settings correct for the used vehicle sector, and do we need to tweak that as well? And the only way you can feasibly, in my mind, approach that with the government is to say to them, you know, we've done our best, but the situation's changed. Do you still want to screw us, or can we get some relief?
Yeah. Hey, government, you didn't screw us over, but the market has. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But if you leave it like this, now we've pointed out, you will screw us over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, we are sleepwalking our way towards a really big problem. And I'm sure, I can't see Phil's comments, but I'm sure if he's still watching, Phil will be head right now. We are literally, as an industry, because the used sector, we work in 8-week increments. What we sold, how long it takes us to turn it back over again. But we're sleepwalking our way to a very big problem.
So Phil notes, and I think I agree with him on this, is that the family car and the average household, it's out of kilter with the CCS. And that's the point you were making, Richard.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
In a roundabout way. The market's changed. The market has done this to us. It's changed. Situation's changed.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, just you don't blame the government, blame the situation. And then the government's going to be it gives them an out, right? Politics is optics, and they don't want to be seen to be the ones that screwed it up. So,
yeah.
You
are free advice.
Yes.
Well,
we know we listened to in Wellington. I'm not sure if we listened to it in the last 5 minutes, but yeah, I don't feel like doing it.
You were swatting flies.
Yes, that was probably a weird dance. I was calling my lovely wife down from the hallway to take my mobile phone and put it on charge, which she kindly did for us as it petered out. So, yes. So, yeah. Phil Haynes, entities like Eastern Europe, household wealth as incomes, they also import used and new. Entities not like Western Europe, who just make and buy new cars. Used does need to have some differences. The dollar to gram isn't working as the only distinction from new. Right. Anyway, Phil does some fun, interesting stuff on the CCS in the last Auto Talk. There's links there to a column that he wrote on his own blog. Go watch it. It is decent. Anyway, thank you everyone for joining us for a very lengthy Auto Talk weekly wrap. Good to be back. I'm going to be around next week. But we'll see what we can do about maybe pre-recording.
Where are you off to now, Richard? Go on.
Wellington.
Okay.
Yeah. So you thought I was going to be going to some exotic place and you could mock me for that, but Wellington's kind of like the place you can't mock me for going, isn't it?
Yeah. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I mocked you, but have fun in the joys of no doubt catch up with Mr. Crawford at some stage. You never know. But yes, and I'll be holding the fort here in sunny West Auckland, dealing with our constituents here with their $20 notes clutched firmly going by their petrol at the pump in their bare feet.
Yes,
exactly. And I make a distinction between the eastern shores of the harbour and Wellington, but I'll be in Wellington.
David, really?
Yes. I'll be going to Wellington next week, but in the early afternoon to drop off my Motor Guzzi, which I've managed to sell in this rather depressed market.
Nice.
Oh, well done. At least someone out there selling a vehicle. Hey, Graham.
I can say Motor Guzzi on Marketplace. What the hell? I'd take that.
Burn. Yeah. I wonder if your buyer will give you a hand cut card.
Nah. be braced now for the next 3 months worth of ghosting phone calls telling you how many issues the vehicle, the bike has, and did you know about this, and they weren't aware of that, and what are your particular rights as a consumer of a private motorcycle.
There's been a fairly good exchange of information to date on the bike, and so he understands that it's not in perfect condition. He knows what he's buying in that sense. So
does he
As
really,
long as there's
David?
as long
Does
as
he
there's a good
really?
exchange in cash, that's the only thing that really matters.
I'm going to
he
say,
doesn't
yeah.
get the keys until the cash is in my account.
Exactly. Right. Anyway, we'll catch you later on.
See you again.